Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. Once again, the portal is alight, which does mean that it is once again time to pull some shards, and I might be alone on this one because the sentiment from most content creators, at least that I've seen, is that they are actually skipping out on the Community Titan event, meaning that there's not really any reason to participate in the accompanying Summon Rush going on this weekend. And you know what? That is a-okay because we are going to absorb all of their potential luck and we're going to manifest it into getting exactly what I want from this Summon Rush for myself. So as always, we're never pulling shards without a purpose. We are pursuing the 4-star soul for Lady Mikage. I do not currently have any iteration of her soul, so it would be useful for me. But of course, there's also the legendary mythical tomes along the way. And then there is this Summon Rush that we have to deal with. Now, in this case, this is not the worst one we have seen. The worst would be around 4,100 points, so where this Immortal Soulstone is. But this one is nonetheless at 3,650, meaning around 7 sacreds required in order to get out this far. You could also do this with voids and primals, but I just find that to be a little bit less efficient. But it does depend on which shard type is close to Mercy, etc., and what champions you're looking for from the accompanying Progressive Chance event. In my case, I'm trying to preserve my proximity to Void Mercy and waiting for like a Yumiko 15x. If that happened to be the one going on right now, we'd be pulling voids. But since it's not, we're going to be pulling sacreds instead. So on top of getting the Titan event points, we are also going to walk away with some dust, some chaos ore, some soul coins, immortal and eternal, some energy, more points, some gems. So it's not the worst thing in the world to get those points along the way. And of course, the 150 that we need on top of the 3,500 from the 7 sacreds will be obtained from the mystery shards, because there is a champion training tournament going on at the same time, and I need to get food from the shards, and so we'll definitely make up that little gap later on. Hopping over to the portal, let's take a look at the current shard count on the account. We have 678 on the ancients, 173 on the voids, 5 on the primals, and 57 on the sacreds, which of course we'll be dipping into for the day. Now there is also a progressive chance going on for a good smattering of champions. For me, I would say the best one that you could go for is probably Harima. I use her extensively. She's one of the best defensive based nukers in the game, but I do already have her, of course, and so I don't really need a duplicate. That would be useful. I would most certainly take it and work towards starting to empower her, but I would rather go in my case for Ragash, which is Harima's counter, for those who don't know, or one of the best champions to counter her with the AoE decrease defense, but I digress. So he's probably one of the top 5 defensive based nukers in the game. He's pretty strong. He's up there in the conversation with her. And then Feral Barkhorn, I think, is like a good Hydra champion. I know there are some people who've compared him and said he's better than Duchess, which is probably true if you're super late in the game and you have a bunch of champions and you have a really robust Hydra team that does not need a reviver. But I think for majority of people who are struggling to progress even to get to Nightmare Hydra or even to get to Brutal Hydra, having a Duchess would probably be better for majority of people. But, I digress. So EDK, Bane of our arena existence, is also in the pool. I don't think you need a copy of him unless you happen to have missed his free event a couple years ago now, or maybe a year and a half. And then Greeborn Ruark is okay, predominantly used in like Dragon to throw the poisons back on the A1, but not super strong. When it comes to the epics, there's nothing really amazing. Skull Crusher was like a back in the day old school OG AoE counterattack champion who's useful for Demon Lord Clan boss. He was actually in one of my original comps for the longest time. Seeker, good for the arena with his speed boost as well as his passive spreading increased defense. Then Burangiri got some claim to fame by being able to solo bomb up to a certain point. So for me, it doesn't really matter about the epics, but I do want to try my hand at getting a Ragash. This is a 15x, so there's roughly a 8%-ish chance that if I get a legendary at all, it is going to be Ragash. So the odds are not great, meaning that there's a 92% chance it's anyone but Ragash, but nonetheless the potential is of course there. When it comes to Mercy, I'll pop up my Mercy tracker on the screen here. If you can find a copy of it in the description box down below. But the main thing to focus on are these cells here. And so when I mentioned before that you could use voids to get the points, if there was a progressive chance for Yumiko right now, who's like my most wanted void legendary, or maybe even a Siphi, because I'm 30 away from Mercy there, meaning worst case it would only take 50 voids in order to guarantee a legendary, and then you'd be rolling on the 15x. I want to preserve that proximity to Mercy until there's a good progressive chance for one of the champions that I actually highly desire, and so I'm somewhat forced to pull Sacreds instead. I was hoping to save this proximity to Sacred Mercy for a future POGO event, and that is still completely possible. We could pull 7 Sacreds and get 0 legendaries, which would be somewhat ideal relative to a POGO, but at the same time, if I have a chance to get Ragash from a legendary here, that would be good as well. So it's kind of a a good potential all around, regardless of what happens in this session. As usual, when it comes to Progressive Champion events, we're not going to taint the wish list by mentioning the other ones. We're just going to focus on the one that is at hand, which is Ragash. And then, of course, in terms of epic, we're still looking for champions for the Lady Mikage fusion. We need 4 at least. I mean, 1 would be nice just to be able to make the Tatsu and start working on that half of the legendary half of the mythical fusion, but I still need a good amount of the epics for Cure the Watcher. I do have 1 already, my first one ready to go, but I will still fuse wait till I can fuse a copy of her just so I make sure that I have her in the future if I ever need her. All right, let's get to the pulls. We've got the space, we've got some cash, and hopefully we get some pretty decent luck. 7 Sacreds, here we go. So like I mentioned, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to walk away with 7 epics. That would not necessarily be ideal when it comes to acquiring legendaries, but it could be ideal when it comes to acquiring legendaries from a POGO event. Siege Hulk. Definitely a very, very strong Ogre and Chibe nuker. He is very, very squishy, but if you can keep him alive, he does have AoE decreased defense and he has increased attack on himself, so you don't need to buff him up. And he has a couple of other hard-hitting abilities. I do use him in Faction Wars as a DPS, and he is very, very solid in the Curse City as well as a debuffer and a DPS. Sacred number 2 is going to be Armina, who is somewhat underwhelming, but she's kind of like a supercharged war maiden, if you will, because she has AoE decreased defense, different affinity, but nonetheless still from the Barbarians faction, 100% chance, and then she has a chance to decrease the turn meter of all enemies by 20%, and it's a stun if they have their turn meter fully depleted, which is kind of hard to make happen, but if they happen to have just taken a turn and she goes after, then you can kind of reduce their turn meter by 20%. She also has a stun on the A1 and a passive that synergizes nice by giving her turn meter whenever an enemy receives a stun. So she can be pretty nice, probably useful again in the Cursed City, but I don't personally have her built on my account. Sacred number 3, another epic. We are stacking them up, and this is Franox. Now, I honestly don't know what she does, but I have heard that she hits relatively hard. So I have here a 3-chime hitter on a single target, can place block buffs. On the A2, attacks one enemy, inflicts 100% more damage with if they don't have any buffs, so which I guess synergizes with the A3, and then a single target decreased attack. I don't know, not blowing me away, but maybe she has like amazing multipliers. Sacred number 4, looks like we got the Lady in Red, or Lady Booby Bell as I like to call her, but her claim to fame is being able to solo Bommel if you put her in a regen set. Basically you turn off her abilities, the rest of her abilities you just let her A1, and she can heal herself on the A1 and then heal from the regen set, and then her passive comes into play whenever the minions or the dread bombs die. They heal her by a ton, more than they deal in damage, and thus she can keep herself alive. Outside of that though, she does have an AoE leech and a potential for decreased speed, so she can be useful for providing healing to your allies. And she also has that Mother Cybele type ability where she can swap HP with a target ally and put Revive on Death on them if they need it. Next Sacred is going to be another epic. Yes, another epic. This is looking good. Skull Crusher. Hey, we finally hit the progressive chance for him. I guess it's been 25x for the past like 3 rolls or something. But as we already mentioned, he is infamous for the AoE counterattack on all allies except himself, on top of having ally protection and unkillable on himself for 1 turn. So he can be a very good cornerstone for your first iteration of a Nightmare Hydra or Nightmare Demon Lord clan boss team and stuff like that. But I did also re-gear him and rebuild him for one of the rotations of the Cursed City because he was really good and essential for Fire Knight being able to use AoE counterattack. At this point, I'm kind of hoping that we really don't get a legendary because this is really, really good to Mercy buildup. Did I just jinx myself? Next Sacred here is going to be another epic. That is good. Kenegashi, one of the few revivers, true revivers for the Shadowkin faction. So if you do need to keep your team running or get them back alive on a 4-turn cooldown, you can revive an ally with 50% HP and a 50% turn rate with increased defense on them. Now, of course, that doesn't matter against the red boss, which is stage 21 because he ignores all defense. But nonetheless, it is a revive and you can run her relatively quickly. She also has a single target allied or a single ally attack, but primarily this is just a turn meter fill 15%, 3-turn cooldown, and then she has some turn meter stealing or decreasing on the A1. So again, primarily a reviver, useful in the Cursed City, but predominantly useful in faction wars. Last Sacred, here we go. Must be an epic. Preserve the Mercy. Yes, perfect. And that is Ruella, one of the most reliable debuffers in the game, if you didn't know. And I say reliable because on her A2 here, she attacks one enemy 3 times, but each hit has a 75% chance when booked of placing each of these 3 debuffs. So when you math all that out probabilistically, it amounts to like a 98% chance or something that she will land all 3 of them because each hit rolls all 3 each time, which is in stark contrast to someone like a Ramantu Drake's Blood, who has 1 debuff for each of his hits, meaning that he has a 3% chance to get resisted for each of those instances. In this case, because you're adding all of the chances up, even though again it's 75% chance, you just add them all up for each of the hits, and it amounts to, like I said, around 98. So around a 2% chance to not land all the debuffs. So it's just a lot more reliable if you need it for something that's a single target like the Shogun's Grove or the Sand Devil. She hits okay. Her ult multipliers are not that amazing, and she is all single target, but nonetheless the A1 can steal some turn meter, which is pretty nice. And then she also has a turn meter fill with increased crit rate on a 3-turn cooldown. So she's very, very fast as well. I think her, when ascended, she has like 112 base speed, very fast. She can keep your team running and be, again, a very, very reliable single target debuffer. So it looks like instead we absorbed all of the bad RNG on behalf of all the content creators. So there you go, people. It is not rigged. Content creator luck is most certainly a myth. But I'll put it back up on the screen, the Mercy tracker here, because I did update it. So this is great for a future POGO event for Sacreds. We are in a great spot. We're 5 deep into Mercy now, meaning that it's just more and more likely with every pull that we're going to get a legendary in a shorter or a small amount of summons in order to get a double legendary, assuming there is a POGO in the near future. So that'll be good. That is great. So we have preserved our Sacred Mercy as well as our Void Mercy, which is the secondary goal of the day. The primary being, of course, happening to get a Ragash. Let's quickly head to the Summon Rush to make sure that I did my math correctly. Yep, we should be just under 3650. And again, I will do the rest of it via mystery shards because there is a champion training tournament going on. We're going to save that energy node for later for champion training, but we have achieved majority of the Titan event points, and we'll get the rest of it a bit later. And if you guys are curious how far I am along right now, we're sitting at around 325. I guess if you count the rest of the Summon Rush, we're probably above 400. And we're not going to make the same mistake as last time. We were going to hold off on collecting the perfect souls just in case there is a soul chase tournament near the end of this. The odds are pretty decent because the Titan events, in this case, it's like 2.5 weeks. We had a fusion for 2 weeks, and the last soul chase was after the last Titan event. So it might happen to land when this one is coming to a close. So we're going to hold off. With lesson learned, I only make mistakes one time usually. And so that is how my progress is going for the Community Titan event. Let me know in the comment section down below if you guys were going to be pulling for this Summon Rush in pursuit of the Titan event, or if you're skipping it along with the Titan event. And as always, if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to hit that like button down below and feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.